Oh, beloved, do you believe that nothing is impossible with God? I said, do you believe it? Because I didn't come here to talk about money as the world knows it. I came to tell you that the same God who multiplies loaves and fish, who opens blind eyes and raises the dead, he is still alive today. And he desires not just to bless your soul, but to raise you up as a steward of abundance for his glory. You see, this isn't about greed. This isn't about chasing gold or glamour. This is about surrender and obedience and daring to believe that if you give God 30 days of your full trust, full discipline, and radical faith, he will shake your world. This is the 30-day Millionaire Challenge. Not a gimmick, not a game, but a God-given invitation to step into alignment with heaven's purpose for your prosperity. Oh, don't you limit what God can do. Don't you put him in a box. Because what you call impossible, he calls done. When we speak of radical obedience, we must understand that it is not partial, it is not delayed, and it is not selective. Radical obedience is full, immediate, and often uncomfortable. It is doing exactly what God asks, how he asks, and when he asks, even when it makes no sense to our natural mind. This kind of obedience is not birthed out of fear, but out of trust. It is rooted in the deep knowledge that God is not a man that he should lie, nor the Son of Man that he should change his mind. When he gives a command, there is divine strategy hidden within it, even if the details are not yet revealed. The provision of God is often waiting on the other side of your obedience. It is not that God is unwilling to bless, it is that he is waiting to see if you trust him enough to follow instructions without understanding the full outcome. Abraham was called to leave his home and go to a land he had never seen. There was no blueprint, no map, no promise of comfort. But with every step of obedience, the heavens allied with the purpose of God. It wasn't until he was willing to offer Isaac that God revealed the next dimension of blessing. Radical obedience opens doors that talent, networking, or even hard work cannot open. This kind of obedience is the posture of the heart that says, God, I trust you more than I trust my bank account. I trust you more than I trust the system. I trust you more than I trust the opinions of people. And in response, God releases supernatural provision. We often cry out for breakthrough, for increase, for financial miracles, yet we resist the instructions that precede the blessing. Radical obedience will require sacrifice. It might mean sowing when you want to save. It might mean walking away from a deal that looks profitable but lacks divine peace. It might mean honoring God with your first fruits even when the bills are stacked high. But hear this clearly. God is not trying to take something from you. He is trying to get something to you, and his way is always higher than ours. The supernatural provision of God is not random. It is attracted to order, to honor, and to obedience. The widow at Zarephath had one meal left, a handful of flour and a little oil. When the prophet Elijah asked her to give it to him first, it made no logical sense. But her obedience in that moment caused a flow of provision that did not run out. Radical obedience makes room for the miraculous. It takes what is not enough in your hands and places it into the hands of God, where multiplication becomes inevitable. In our journey through the 30-day Millionaire Challenge, you must understand this is not about formulas. It is about obedience. You cannot follow a worldly path and expect kingdom results. When God gives you an instruction, whether it is to fast, to give, to serve, or to shift your mindset, you must obey swiftly. Delayed obedience is disobedience. And disobedience creates blockage. Many are praying for overflow, but their lives are leaking obedience. Radical obedience is the plug that seals the breach and releases the flow. God honors those who honor him. When you move according to his voice, you are aligning yourself with divine timing and provision. You're no longer striving in the flesh, but flowing in the spirit. Obedience brings clarity, it brings favor, and it brings resources. Heaven backs those who obey. That is why in these 30 days, every instruction matters. Every prompting of the Holy Spirit is a seed with a harvest attached. Obedience will often require you to look foolish to others. Noah looked foolish, building an ark in the absence of rain. But obedience preserved his life and his legacy. You don't have to understand the entire picture. You just need to take the next step God shows you. Obedience is not about certainty. It's about surrender. It's trusting that if God asked for it, then he has already made provision for what's next. This is the foundation of supernatural increase. Not manipulation, not strategy, not hustle, but obedience. Radical, complete, unwavering obedience. It is what separates those who wish from those who walk. It is the very trigger for divine multiplication. Faith must always come before the finances. That is the divine order. It is not finances that produce faith, but faith that unlocks the finances. Too many wait for money to come before they believe, when God is calling them to believe so that money can come. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It is not wishful thinking or blind optimism. It is the spiritual force that reaches into the unseen and pulls the promises of God into the visible realm. When we talk about faith in the context of provision, we are not talking about comfort or convenience. We are talking about a deep trust in God's nature as provider. Even when lack surrounds you, the kind of faith that precedes finances does not wait for a bank notification or a business deal. It begins with an inner conviction that if God said it, then it must be so. Throughout Scripture, we see this pattern repeated over and over again. The blessing comes after the belief. The healing comes after the faith is demonstrated. The walls fall after the march. God never rewards doubt. He moves in response to faith. And faith is often tested in the area of finances because money is one of the loudest voices in our lives. It tells us what we can do, where we can go, what we can have, and how we are seen. But when faith speaks louder than money, when your decisions are no longer dictated by your bank account, but by your trust in God, that is when you begin to walk in supernatural increase. You cannot enter into this 30-day millionaire challenge with a mindset that waits to see results before believing. Faith must precede the manifestation. If you need to see it before you believe it, you're not walking by faith, you're walking by sight. And the kingdom of God does not operate by sight. It operates by trust, by surrender, and by faith-filled obedience. That is why Jesus marveled not at riches, but at faith. He looked for it. He responded to it. Faith moves the heart of God because it reveals dependency, humility, and honor. Some of the greatest financial miracles in the Bible began with faith that seemed irrational. Peter cast his net after a long night of catching nothing, simply because Jesus said so. That is faith preceding finances. The boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish surrendered his lunch, not knowing that it would feed thousands. That is faith preceding provision. The widow who poured out her last oil into borrowed jars had no logical reason to believe it would multiply, but it did because faith led the action. What we learn from these stories is that God is not looking for abundance in your hands before he moves. He's looking for abundance in your heart. Abundance of trust, abundance of belief, abundance of surrender. When you declare that God is your source, it must not just be words. It must be demonstrated in the way you handle resources, opportunities, and instructions. Faith shows up in the tithe when the numbers are tight. Faith shows up when you launch that idea with no guarantee. Faith shows up when you apply for the job or sign the deal with nothing but a word from God. That is the realm where heaven opens. Faith before finances is not just a concept, it is a lifestyle. It is a spiritual law. And when it is honored, it never returns void. During this 30-day journey, there will be moments where God asks you to do something that challenges your natural logic. You may be called to give in a way that stretches you or to believe for something far beyond your current means. In those moments, you must understand that faith is the currency of heaven. God does not transact in dollars and cents. He moves through faith. Your belief becomes your investment in the invisible realm, and in return, God brings visible breakthrough. Faith is not just what you feel during a sermon. It is what you walk out when the emotional high is faded and the circumstances still look the same. God will always call you to believe before he allows you to receive. Because the process of faith purifies motives, breaks pride, and deepens your reliance on him. It's not about the amount of money that comes in, it's about the measure of faith that goes out. The larger your faith, the greater your capacity to receive. The stronger your belief, the more space you create for divine supply. Faith must be the engine, not the trailer. It must go first, lead the way, and pull the miracle into motion. God does not simply prosper people. He prospers purpose. This is a truth that must be grasped deeply if we are to walk in sustainable, kingdom-minded abundance. Too often, the pursuit of wealth becomes self-centered, driven by personal gain, image, or comfort. But divine prosperity flows where divine purpose is honored. God is not in the business of funding egos. He funds assignments. When your heart is aligned with his purpose, provision becomes a natural outcome, not a struggle. Heaven releases resources to those who carry responsibility for kingdom impact. Prosperity in the eyes of God is not just about having more, it's about becoming more useful for his glory. When you attach your vision to something greater than yourself, when your business, your dream, your investment, or your career becomes a tool in God's hand, that is where multiplication begins. The story of Joseph is a powerful example. He was not raised up to be wealthy for the sake of status. He was elevated to preserve a nation. His promotion served a prophetic purpose. Everything he endured, betrayal, slavery, false accusation, was shaping him for an assignment. And when the time came, Pharaoh entrusted him with the economy of Egypt, not because Joseph was ambitious, but because he was trustworthy. He had the heart of a servant, the mind of a steward, and the fear of the Lord. Prosperity followed purpose. He became the answer to famine because he had first become the answer to God's call. You cannot separate provision from purpose and expect heaven to endorse it. The oil flows when there is a vessel that's being set apart for divine use. When you understand that your money is not yours, that it belongs to God and is meant to fulfill a heavenly assignment, your relationship with it changes. It no longer controls you. It no longer defines you. You become a channel, not a container. You become someone God can trust to receive and release. And the more he can trust you, the more he entrusts to you. That is why purpose must be established before the finances arrive. Without purpose, wealth becomes a curse. It inflates pride, feeds addiction, and amplifies dysfunction. But when you are anchored in purpose, wealth becomes a weapon, a holy tool to build, bless, and break chains. God prospered Solomon not just because he asked for wisdom, but because his desire was to govern well, to serve God's people, to honor the assignment given to him. His motives unlocked unprecedented wealth. The Queen of Sheba didn't come to admire his palace. She came to witness how he stewarded what God had given. It was excellence in purpose that attracted influence and prosperity. When your why is right, your what will be blessed. When your motivation is aligned with God's mission, he will fund your vision. That's why during this 30-day Millionaire Challenge, you must clarify your purpose. Why do you want to prosper? Who will benefit? What eternal impact will it make? If your only goal is to get rich, you may find success, but it will be fragile, fleeting, and ultimately empty. But if your desire is to prosper so that others are lifted, the kingdom is expanded, and God's name is glorified, then you are positioning yourself for supernatural support. God looks at the heart. He weighs the intentions, and when he sees a vessel that carries vision, humility, and purpose, he releases provision, not as a reward, but as a responsibility. Because wealth without purpose is a distraction, but wealth with purpose is destiny fulfilled. Purpose brings clarity to your decisions. It dictates how you use your time, who you partner with, and what you say no to. When you are purpose-driven, you are not easily swayed by trends or tempted by shortcuts. You understand that everything you build must carry weight in eternity. Your business becomes a ministry. Your income becomes an instrument. Your life becomes a sermon. That kind of posture attracts heaven's endorsement. God will always bless what reflects his character and advances his cause. He is not looking for perfect people. He is looking for purposeful people. Those who will use what he gives not to make their name great, but to make his name known. Discipline is the doorway to divine increase. Without it, even the most powerful revelations and prophetic words remain dormant. Discipline is the bridge between desire and fulfillment. It takes the vision out of the realm of dreams and plants it into the soil of reality, where growth and increase can take place. You may have faith, purpose, and passion, but without discipline, you will abort the process that leads to prosperity. God honors order, and discipline brings order into your life. It governs your habits, your choices, your time, and your thoughts. It is the structure that supports the weight of blessing. Many cry out for more, but God will never send increase into chaos. He releases more into the hands of those who have shown that they can handle what they already have. Every day is a seed. Every decision is an investment. Discipline is not always exciting, but it is always essential. It shows up in early mornings when no one sees you, in the sacrifices you make when you could choose comfort, in the consistency you maintain even when you don't feel inspired. In the kingdom, discipline is not legalism. It is love in motion. It is your way of saying to God, I value what you've given me, and I will steward it with excellence. You don't prepare for promotion when the opportunity comes. You prepare through discipline before the opportunity ever arrives. It is how you show heaven you are ready. Jesus lived a life of extraordinary discipline. Though he carried the fullness of divinity, he submitted himself to a schedule of prayer, solitude, study, and obedience. He fasted. He retreated to pray. He followed the timing of the Father. Even the Son of God did not bypass discipline. He modeled for us that discipline is not a hindrance to freedom. It is the pathway to it. Discipline liberates you from the tyranny of your impulse. It frees you from being led by your emotions and empowers you to be led by purpose. Without discipline, potential remains potential. But with it, potential becomes power, and power becomes manifestation. In this 30-day Millionaire Challenge, discipline is what will distinguish the dreamers from the doers. There will be days when motivation fades, when resistance rises, and when the voice of doubt grows louder than the voice of vision. But discipline silences doubt. It says, I will show up, I will follow through, I will move forward no matter how I feel. It's the repetitive, intentional action that tells your spirit, your mind, and your circumstances that you are committed to the journey. God doesn't need your perfection, he needs your persistence. He honors those who show up in obedience and discipline day after day, trusting that each small step is building towards something bigger. Financial increase is spiritual before it is practical, and it is practical before it is visible. That means you must build habits that align with what you're believing for. If you're believing for increase, you must discipline your spending, your saving, your giving, and your planning. You can't ask God to bless your finances while continue to mismanage what you already have. Discipline teaches you to tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. It trains you to see wealth not as a windfall, but as a flow. Something that can be directed, multiplied, and sustained through stewardship. God responds to order. When he created the world, he didn't bless chaos. He brought order first, and then he called it good. In your life, discipline creates the framework for God to fill. It is like building a vessel before the oil is poured. No vessel, no miracle. No discipline, no increase. You cannot expect overflow if your daily life leaks consistency. The enemy knows he doesn't have to steal your dream if he can steal your discipline. Because without it, you'll sabotage your own breakthrough. But when you commit to discipline, you become dangerous. You become reliable in the hands of God, a steward who can be trusted with more because you've proven faithful with little. Discipline sharpens your focus. It teaches you to delay gratification. It aligns your habits with your hope, and over time, it compounds. What starts as small, consistent choices builds momentum and creates results that others call miraculous, but you know are the fruit of unseen faithfulness. In the eyes of God, discipline is worship. It is honor in action. It is what turns dreams into testimonies and prophecies into fulfillment. Miracles follow movement, not comfort. Throughout the Bible and in the lives of those who walk by faith, this principle repeats itself like a divine rhythm. God is drawn to motion, to steps of obedience, to people who are willing to leave the shore before the sea splits. Miracles are not reserved for the passive, the hesitant, or the fearful. They come to those who dare to move, even when the outcome is unclear. God rarely delivers the full plan up front because he is more interested in your trust than your convenience. When he told Abram to leave his father's house and go to a land he would show him, Abram didn't get a map, he got a mandate. And as he moved, the miracle unfolded. Many wait for conditions to be perfect before stepping out. But miracles rarely wait for the perfect moment. They meet you in motion. The lepers in Luke 17 were healed as they went, not before, not when they stood still, but in the very act of moving toward what Jesus told them to do. Movement activates heaven. Comfort keeps you still, keeps you second-guessing, keeps you replaying old conversations and missed opportunities. But when you move, even if it's just a step, you create space for God to step in. Movement is a sign of faith. It says, God, I don't see the full picture, but I trust you enough to begin. Comfort may feel safe, but it is not the soil where miracles grow. Comfort often disguises itself as wisdom, prudence, or caution. But at its root, it's usually fear. Fear of failure, fear of lack, fear of what others might say. And fear will keep you praying for miracles while refusing to move toward them. It will let you sing about breakthrough, but resist the changes required to experience it. The children of Israel stood at the edge of the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind them. Moses cried out to God, and God responded not with a comforting word, but with a command. Tell the people to move forward. The sea did not part until their feet touched the edge of impossibility. In this 30-day Millionaire Challenge, you must understand that your miracle is on the other side of your motion. This is not just about dreaming or hoping, it's about doing. It's about making that call, writing that plan, submitting that application, launching that idea, and trusting that as you move, provision will meet you. God does not anoint your intentions, He anoints your steps. The oil flows where there is obedience in motion. You don't have to leap into the unknown with everything figured out. You just have to be willing to take the next step in faith. The enemy of movement is stagnation wrapped in spiritual language. Some hide behind prayer as a delay tactic, praying endlessly for confirmation when God already gave the instruction. Others wait for signs that they are fully qualified, fully resourced, or fully ready. But God often calls the unqualified, the underprepared, and the overlooked, because He gets the glory when they move. David didn't wait until he had armor to face Goliath. He moved with what he had, a sling, some stones, and the backing of heaven. If he had waited for the comfort of proven strategy, he would have missed the miracle. Miracles are not bound by your comfort zone. In fact, they often exist just beyond it. If everything feels manageable, predictable, and easy, you might be walking by control, not by faith. Faith calls you into deeper waters. It calls you to risk looking foolish, to risk discomfort, to risk change. But every step you take into discomfort with God is a step into destiny. Movement stretches you, it grows your capacity. It trains your spirit to listen for God's leading, not the voice of fear. And as you move, your faith muscles strengthen. You stop being a spectator and become a participant in the supernatural. The woman with the issue of blood did not wait for Jesus to notice her. She pressed through the crowd. She moved beyond social norms, physical pain, and personal shame to touch the hem of his garment. And in that moment, healing flowed. Miracles happen when movement is made. Comfort would have told her to stay home, but faith said go. That same voice is speaking to you now. What you've been praying for is often connected to a step you've been resisting. God is waiting on your move. not because he needs your strength, but because he honors your faith. Every step, every act of obedience, every risk taken in faith, those are the moments where heaven meets earth.